Alright, man. New year, new Blu-rays. 2023 January. Let's do this, man. Alright, here we go, man. On January 3rd, from the Criterion Collection, we have Terry Gilliam's The Adventures of Baron Munchausen on 4K and on Blu-ray as well. A film I haven't seen. There are a couple of blind spots in Terry Gilliam's filmography that I still need to get to. I'm not quite sure the reputation on this one. I know this might be a bit of a cult film, but I don't know where it would rank in terms of some of his other work. But the majority of Terry Gilliam's work I find at least interesting above all else, even if I'm not always the biggest fan of the individual film. He's a very interesting visual filmmaker, and I even recently seeing some of his work like Time Bandits, which I thought was a very good film, also on the Criterion Collection, has definitely made me more interested in a release like this. So this is one that I will definitely be writing down for the sale in July. Black Adam's getting multiple releases this day on 4K and on regular Blu-ray. Now, what's peculiar about this is that this is already on HBO Max, and I know there's been some talk lately about recent films that have gone to streaming that may or may not be getting physical releases, man. The two films I've been hearing most that are in ambiguity on whether or not they'll get Blu-rays or not has been Barbarian and See How They Run. Now, to my knowledge, Barbarian is getting a physical release. I know it's been delayed, but I read some talk that there was not going to be one, and then I forgot where I read it, but somebody said that it was coming. I don't know, but See How They Run, which was a recent film which I enjoyed quite a bit with Sam Rockwell and Saoirse Ronan, to my knowledge, has no plan for a physical release. So that's very disheartening, and I really hope that a lot of these films do get releases, because I mean, this is a film, I haven't seen the film, but this is a comic book DC film, so I'm sure the completionists out there who want to buy all of the DC or Marvel films they want to buy for their collection, so this makes more sense and would be more profitable than a film like See How They Run, for example. Apologies. So it is interesting. I really hope that a lot of these films that uh, are just quickly coming to streaming, because the thing with this, man, is that this was on streaming less than a month after it was released, man. I mean, that's a whole other discussion. I was actually talking to an acquaintance of mine not too long ago about where I believe that the future is going in terms of release strategies for theatrical versus streaming post pandemic. But either way, if you're a fan of this film, you have a couple different options to choose from. It is good they are at least putting it on 4K as well. There are times where they will either just put it on just on Blu-ray, or even worse, sometimes just DVD. But the fact they are going all out. Plus, this is a big tentpole film, so they're going to want to put all of the resources into it. Another recent film, Pray for the Devil, which I have not seen, is getting a 4K and a Blu-ray as well. An acquaintance of mine said it was not very good. A film that I admittedly wasn't a fan of, but is coming to Blu-ray the same day, is Armageddon Time, the new James Gray film. I wasn't a fan of the film, but I think James Gray is a very interesting filmmaker. The film he did a couple years ago, Ad Astra, was a highlight of that year, and I think has been very criminally underappreciated and underseen, frankly. I mean, it's not a film for everybody. I had an acquaintance of mine I used to be familiar with who wasn't a fan of the film, and that's totally understandable. Like, some films are not going to work for you, but if this is one you're interested in, then it's coming out on this day as well. Moving over to the UK on a label I wanted to mention, man, is Radiance Films. They've been popping up a lot with a lot of cool titles, man. On January 2nd, you have The Working Class Goes to Heaven, as well as Big Time Gambling Boss. Now, admittedly, I'm not familiar with either of these films, but a lot of their releases they've been putting out, it's definitely one you're going to want to keep an eye on. As well, on this day, I'm not sure who's putting this one out, but Married to the Mob, which recently got a Fun City release. Oh, okay, so this is a Fun City release in the UK as well. You know what? I think they're the ones actually handling the UK release of Cutter's Way as well. Yeah, I have the US version of this with Michelle Pfeiffer, and I haven't watched it yet. An acquaintance of mine said it's not very good, but Fun City are a label who I will buy anything they put out, because I love what I think Jonathan Hertzberg is putting together a lot of these films like Jeremy and Cutter's Way and Smile, Radio On, that I think people knew about, but film fans, like cult film fans, probably knew about, but the general public probably didn't as much. So I'll buy anything that they put out. Next C as well on here. On January 9th in the UK, we have some Arrow titles coming, The Executioner Collection and The Dunwich Horror. I have not seen these films, so I cannot say for sure. As well as what looks like a re-release of Don't Go in the House, which is one of the better 80s slashers in my opinion. I've always heard this as being a Psycho ripoff, but admittedly I understand why it would be one, but every time I've watched it, it never really clicked for me on there. What looks to be another re-release, to my knowledge, is the Rainer Werner Fassbinder Collection, Volume 1. I believe that this already has, this is Volume 1, so this has to be a re-release, man. An acquaintance of mine, I think, owns all of the box sets. So I don't know if this is one of theirs where they do a slimmer cased edition, because sometimes they'll do that. They'll put out a box set and an actual physical, like a big case with individual cases, and then they'll put out a skinnier, more shelf-conscious release. But either way, that's coming there, going back to the US on January 10th. A couple films that got delayed that I mentioned previously, but are coming. Dragons Forever in 4K is finally getting released. This was supposed to come out in November, I think, man. But an acquaintance of mine actually just posted a review on his YouTube channel of it, so he has seen it, he does like it, and it is cool. Groundhog Day 4K, I think this might just be a re-release of a Steelbook, because I believe this might already have a previous 4K as is. Decision to Leave, the new Park Chan-wook film released by Mubi. It's really great that Mubi are actually physically releasing a lot of, are starting to physically release a lot of their films. It's sort of, I don't know who. I believe they were the U.S. distributors of this film. I mean, they made a big point about it that they had it on their service. And if you don't already have Mubi, you should definitely be looking into that, because there's a lot of stuff on there that a lot of films in there that have been a little difficult to watch anywhere else. But Decision to Leave is a film I like quite a bit. It's the first Park Chan-wook film in a couple years since, I believe, The Handmaiden, and I really enjoyed this one. I think I wouldn't have to watch it again. I'm not quite in the love category for it. I have my issues with it, but overall, I think it's a very good mystery. A lot of comparisons to Vertigo and Basic Instinct, and it's for good reason, man. I mean, it's a good film to be compared to. On this day, as well, from the Criterion Collection, is Imitation of Life from 1934.
And I want to tell you how sorry I am for what I did to you. Oh, that's all right. Come, baby. And sit down. You don't feel like you're really here standing so far off. Mother, I've done everything you wanted me to. I went to that school and tried to be happy there to please you. But I just couldn't bear it. I couldn't. I had to get away. I understand, baby. We're going to forget all about it now. It's all right. But it isn't all right, Mother. I want to talk to you.
I'll go upstairs, Delilah.
No, Miss B. You stay, please. I want you to hear, too. What's my little baby got on her mind?
And this is one that I actually watched not too long ago, and one that I really liked a lot. It's interesting when you watch films from the 30s or 40s, films that are very race-heavy in terms of trying to make a statement on race and class. Some of them obviously date better than others, and you can't judge you can't compare the sentiments of a film from the 30s or 40s to the contemporary sentiments. But this is a film that I really like a lot, man. This is one that I was actually surprised how well it held up and how enjoyable it was. A solid drama about race and class, and one that there's another film called Imitation of Life that I believe came out in the 50s, which I haven't seen yet, but actually I have recorded currently on TCM, so if you're unfamiliar with this one, definitely want to keep an eye on that. Some delays as well. Gorgeous, I think I talked about a month or two ago, is finally coming out in the US as well. Speaking of the Arrow titles, the Dunwich Horror and the Executioner Collection are also coming, as well as, interestingly enough, Ouija in 4K is coming from Scream Factory. Now, I never saw the first film. I'd only seen the sequel, Origin of Evil, I think it's called, and I wasn't really a fan of that film, but most people seem to enjoy that film much more, so it is interesting why they're putting this one out, in terms of, I don't know how much wide appeal this would have, in terms of outside of, people collecting, I suppose. Also on this day, we have some other titles here. Let's see here, man. Let's see. You know what, man? This is going to sound kind of like a weird recommendation, but in terms of surprises, in terms of it being not a great film, but a film I actually found myself enjoying, is The Friendship Game. This is a new release film, and I initially saw the trailer and didn't have much interest, but I eventually saw it, man, and it's not a great film. I can't stress that enough. It's very flawed. You can pick this thing apart like cotton candy, man, and if you do that, you're gonna be making your head spin. But as a psychological horror film, I think it actually is pretty enjoyable for what it is, man. There's a lot of of jumps in times. There's a lot of interesting visuals that they do. I mean, for a film that I had the lowest of expectations for, that I ended up seeing and going, you know what, man, those actually pretty enjoyable. I would actually say if you're trying to watch a lot of genre fare from this year, give it a chance, man. You may dig it as well. All right, jumping back into the UK. On January 16th, some new releases here. Black Adam on this day, Halloween Ends. But the interesting one to note here that I would recommend if you don't already have this release is a re-release of Indicators. One of their best Blu-rays, in my opinion, is Gaspar Noé's masterpiece, Irreversible. Been a big fan of for a long time, and that release they put out, their standard like big boxed release, man, Indicator, I don't want to choose favorites because I think every company putting out titles in their own right is fantastic, but Indicator are really knocking out of the park. This was the first time that I ended up rewatching it in quite some time, because I never owned the DVD, and I know there was a French Blu-ray. Don't know if there were subtitles on it, but I hadn't seen it in a while, and it held up so much, man. It actually, in my opinion, got better over time. It's a brutal, dark film, very notorious, very controversial, but I think very impactful as well. And on that release, which I would imagine that this would have as well, is the straight cut of the film, where the film is told in this version in a linear way, in narrative-wise. So I'm not sure how that would work. I still have not. Let's see here. Yeah, okay, so this release does as well have the straight cut. So if you missed that release, or you didn't want the whole box or anything like that, then this was one that if you're a fan of the film, you definitely need to own this release, man, because this is the best release it's going to get. I know there was talk of, I think somebody said Criterion were talking about picking it up. That could have been rumor hearsay, but as much as I love Criterion, I don't think they could do it justice that Indicator had, for sure, man. Okay, man. So on January 17th in the US, we have a couple 4Ks coming. Double Jeopardy in 4K. I believe this is a Paramount title, to my knowledge. Cloverfield in 4K. Again, this might be a re-release as well, because I thought that this already had a 4K, but maybe not. This is getting a steelbook. From Shout Factory, Wrath of Man is getting a 4K, which was an interesting title that they picked up. This is a recent film from 2021, a Guy Ritchie film, which is pretty good. It's not too bad, but it was interesting that they picked it up and that hadn't even gotten a 4K originally, as well as I believe this is also a re-release of their 4K of They Live in a steelbook, and you can add that to the never-ending list of re-releases from Shout Factory and Scream Factory. The real interesting one on this day for me, for sure, is Lars von Trier's Europe trilogy, consisting of The Element of Crime, Epidemic, and Europa.
1. You are in Germany.
Please excuse my curiosity, but what are you doing here?
I'm a sleeping car conductor.
2. The year is 1945.
Alles, was Sie tun sollen, ist eine Sprengladung unter Ihrem Schlafwagen zu befestigen. Jesus Christ.
3. You are in a train in Germany.
It was the sight of the hanged people that touched me so deeply. After all, they were only fighting for their country.
4. You are being led through the train. 5. You are led through carriages you never knew existed.
It's time someone showed this country a little kindness.
Aber Sie sind ja wirklich ein echter Idealist, Herr Kessler.
Back into your compartments now!
The only three of these films I've seen is Europa. I have the old Criterion DVD, and what a fantastic film for sure. The Element of Crime is one that I don't know how available it was for a while or how easily accessible. There's a couple of his films, some of his earlier works that are not exactly unavailable, but are not. They don't have great releases for sure. I think I could see the Idiots getting a Blu-ray at some point, especially since Thomas Vinterberg's The Celebration had just received one not too long ago. But Europa, I think, is one of the strongest films. It has the ending of that film. I always stuck with me, man. It's there's a death at the end of the film that I found very bothersome in a way that works effectively, along with great narration. Man, this is a no-brainer for sure to be picked up. As well as I had mentioned before, with Radiance Films coming, they have the U.S. release of Big Time Gambling Boss as well. Some Kino stuff coming on this day. There's some re-releases here that Kino had just picked up. The Missing in Action trilogy, which I don't know who owned it previously, but those were very common Blu-rays for a while. I've actually never seen those for sure. And then a couple other films here, which I don't know if these were originally released or not, but Programmed to Kill, No Mercy, and Ghost Warrior on that day as well. So moving on down here, on January 23rd, we have the fourth Ingmar Bergman set coming from BFI. Now, let me see if I can get a list of films here in this one. We have Cries and Whispers, Scenes from a Marriage, Autumn Sonata, From the Life of Marionettes, Fading Alexander, After the Rehearsal, and Saraband. Now, these were all already available in the Criterion US box set, but I believe that in the previous box sets from BFI, there are a couple of Bergman's films that were not available in that set for rights reasons or forever that is. The films off the top of my head I could not remember, but I don't know how financially better it would be to get these individual sets or to get the Criterion box set, but I haven't looked at the features in terms of what they're offering, but it's totally up to you, man. I think you'd probably be spending less on the US box set. You'd be getting I would assume more films and individual box sets, man, because there's works in there that have not been released here in on Blu-ray. But speaking of the BFI, this film has been out for a while in the U.S., but I wanted to mention it now. From 1990, The Juniper Tree, starring Bjork.
Out from here, out from there, out to take you anywhere. Into iron, into stone, out from here, our way begun.
You look like our mother did when she saw. Your eyes look the same.
What do you see?
I don't know.
This got a previous release from Arbalos Entertainment, I think 5 years ago or so, and this is a very good film, man. I saw this theatrically quite a while ago. This had a recent restoration. It's a very interesting, quiet art film. It's only about 70 minutes or so it goes by a pretty good pace, and it's one that has stuck with me for the past couple of years, man. I think Bjork's a very good actor. I'm really not familiar with her music at all. Strange enough, I'm actually more familiar with her as an actor. But if you're curious about this one, then, see what you can do. Like I said, if you're somebody who's into a lot of slower, quieter films, very, artsy kind of films, but sometimes, you look at run times and it can be a little off-putting or it can be a little difficult for you to push play on a 2.5 hour, 3 hour film. This is 70 minutes, man, and it goes by at a pretty brisk pace. So if you are unfamiliar with this, then you should definitely keep an eye on it if it sounds like it'd be up your alley. On January 24th in the U.S., actually quite a lot on this day, so let's just go right into it. From Kino Lorber, we have Charles Bronson in Death Wish. This is a classic piece of 70s cinema, man. Charles Bronson is just, one of the greatest action stars of all time, and this is the film that, on its own, it's a very nihilistic and somber revenge film. It's less about Charles Bronson's character getting revenge on the people who did these horrible acts to his wife and his daughter, more about a senseless kind of vigilante mentality of just going out there and wanting to put the situation into your own hands. And as its own, disregarding the sequels, it's a very good film as well, and one that I'm definitely going to be upgrading. And with that said, the sequels I actually like all the sequels as well. I've recently rewatched the 4K of Death Wish 2 that was put up by Vinegar Syndrome, and how much I like that film had actually gone up. It's got that same nihilistic tone, but it's more playful in its revenge. And Death Wish 3, little known secret, has been my New Year's first film to watch for about 6 or 7 years now. It's my favorite action film. It's a film that I find immensely enjoyable and has always had a real soft spot for me. And 4, I think, is very good as well, and 5 is actually not too bad either. So I'm hoping to get 3, 4, and 5 on 4K sometime soon. I know 3 had a recent re-release from Scorpion, so fingers crossed on that. From Vestron, man, we have the Dentist Collection, the Dentist 1 and the Dentist 2. Brace yourself. I've only ever seen the first Dentist, man. I remember it was a very common DVD for a while, and it's a film that I remember individual moments of. I remember the kills. A lot of the film I don't exactly remember, but I mean, I like that Vestron are doing these collections for fair prices, man. I mean, I had some acquaintances who picked up that Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, 4, and 5 collection, and they're paid like $12, $13 for it. And let me tell you, man, these are good transfers, man. I don't know how they are in features now, because I know some releases it more than others, but Vestron, man, I'm really happy they're still doing stuff. And this is one that I may not jump to, but I know this probably has a big cult following behind it, so check it out if you're interested. It looks like the Jackie Chan collection got delayed from last month. I believe I already talked about this, so I'm not going to talk about that. Another Shout Factory 4K that's coming is Freaky with Vince Vaughn and Catherine Newton. This was a 2020 film that I'm surprised it did not get a 4K upon initial release. I'm not sure why. Very enjoyable body swap film. It's a film that, I mean, I'm a big Vince Vaughn fan, as is. I think Catherine Newton's a very interesting actor. I just rewatched her in The Map of Tiny Perfect Things, and she's a very charismatic actor, and I really like her a lot. And they're both very good in the film, man. I think Vince Vaughn is an actor who's really great at comedy and really great at drama, and he's really playing it up here. He's really having fun with it. Some problems with the plot. My big problem that I always had with the film is really that it ends and then it goes on for another 10 minutes. That always stuck out to me, man. But overall, very enjoyable film. I already have the Blu Ray of this, so I'm not going to upgrade. But if you haven't already, then this is one that I think is worth your time. MVD is releasing Men at Work. Now, this is a real fun film from 1990 of Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez, who play garbage men who end up getting wrapped up in this murder plot. I've only ever seen it once, but this is a total cult film, man. This is just a total good time. I really love 90s Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez, and so, I mean, you really can't go wrong with this one, man. And MVD as well. Their titles are pretty cheap, actually, so, especially when they have a sale. I mean, geez Louise, man, they had a sale once. I think I picked up like 10, 15 titles for no more than $7 each, man. It was a great time. Warner Archive are still going strong, thankfully. I know there were some rumors, and might actually still be some rumors about their ambiguous future, but I'm glad they're still putting stuff out. 3 films I'm admittedly not familiar with. We have The Long, Long Trailer, Goodbye Mr. Chips, and Wife vs. Secretary. Very curious if Brian Sauer is familiar with these films. He tends to buy a lot of Warner Archive titles and knows a lot of these, so if you're curious about these, maybe check him out and see what he has to say about it. A big one that we're finally getting a re-release on from MVD is The Last American Virgin. This previously had a release from Olive Films that had no features on it. Now, Olive Films were good at putting out titles that were a little trickier to come by, like films like French Postcards, for example. But the problem is that they had no features. They were very bare bones. I don't know if there are features on this one. This was also released by Error UK a little while ago. But this is a really interesting 80s sex comedy put up by Canon Films. It's very interesting in tone because it feels like non-Americans making what they feel like is an American sex comedy with an unforgettable ending that everybody always talks about. And when the credits come up, it almost takes you back, going, "What?" I mean, but it makes sense though. I got a soft spot for a lot of 70s and 80s sex comedies. I mean, a lot of them are very on PC. Obviously, you can't judge them from today's standards, but there's just a lot of ones that I come across, like Gas Pump Girls and Zaps. They're very corny, very cheesy, hard bodies. They're ridiculous, but they're ridiculous fun, and this is one that will definitely be picked up for sure. As well on this day, we have Puppet Master 3, Toulon's Revenge, coming in 4K from, I think Full Moon has to be putting this one out, man. Full Moon directly. I never looked up if their transfers 4K looked any good or not. I still haven't seen that film, but I'm curious why this was the first one they went with in the Puppet Master series for 4K as well. So let's see, that might be good on this day. All right, so we are going to go back to the UK on January 30th. We have some good stuff here as well. Delays from the previous months I had mentioned from Indicator. We have The Big Gun Down, Enter Santo, and Magic Myth and Mutilation box sets. Hopefully we'll still be coming on that day. Double Jeopardy in 4K is coming that day, and looks like that is it. And one other title that I'm going to talk about in the US, so looks like that is that for the UK. So going back to America on January 31st, right at the end of the month here, we have, again, quite a good amount of titles today, man. It looks like they put all their titles really in the last couple weeks, but that's all right, man. We're going to go right through them. Another Scream Factory 4K on this day. We have the 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead. This is one that a lot of people are big fans of. They consider it one of the better horror remakes, and it's a film that I think has actually held up pretty decently as well. It had been a while since I'd seen it. I rewatched it not too long ago, maybe about a year or two ago, and it's not bad, man. I don't think it's a great film by any means, and it's not one that I'm going to upgrade or rewatch or anything like that. Actually, I don't even know if I own the regular Blu Ray or not. I really have no idea. But either way, probably not going to upgrade, but this is one that has a lot of fans behind it, so it's cool that this is finally getting a release, and I imagine that probably Land of the Dead will probably get a 4K at some point as well. The Italian Job getting a 4K from, I believe, Kino Lorber. Yes, Kino Lorber putting this one out. I have not seen this one. I thought I did, but the other Michael Caine crime film that I had actually seen was Get Carter. So this is one to be keeping an eye out for sure, especially during Kino sales when they discount a lot of their 4Ks, at least for the most part, unless it's Touch of Evil when they keep the same price. Crimes of the Future, the recent David Cronenberg film, getting a 4K. Again, I don't know why this didn't get a 4K originally for whatever reason, but it's there if you're interested in it, and as well as Event Horizon getting a 4K upgrade from the previous Paramount release. Paramount putting this one out, whereas Scream Factory had put out the standard Blu-ray of this. Let's see here. The Lady from Shanghai, the Orson Welles film coming to Kino Lorber, one that I haven't seen but has been on my radar for a while. I believe I actually tried to watch this a little while ago, and at the time I don't think this was streaming or wasn't available. Or maybe it was, I just didn't see it, but definitely going to be getting this one. I've really been keen on watching this one, as well as Enter Santo from Indicators coming to the US, as well as the Magic Myth and Mutilation box sets, not the Big Gun Down, as we mentioned before, that already has a release from Grindhouse Releasing that you should definitely keep an eye out for. Now this one, I don't know if this is a re-release or not. I thought this had a previous Blu-ray, but don't quote me on that. From 2007 is a really phenomenal film, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, with Matthew Amalric and Emmanuel Singer. And I love this film. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I could have sworn this had a previous Blu-ray. Okay, it looks like it did. Okay, it did have a previous Blu-ray. I don't know if that went out of print or what, but either way, this is a pretty decent price right now, about $15. If you haven't seen this film, you definitely got to keep an eye out on this. Bergman Island is getting a Criterion. Recent 2021 film I'm going to have to rewatch for the 2021 show. Not too crazy about it, but I definitely want to rewatch it. I think the structure of the story kind of threw me off initially, so getting an opportunity to rewatch it is in place to get a new perspective on it. One of the big ones on this day for me, for sure, is the Lucas Moodysson collection coming from Arrow Video. On the 1998 episode, I had watched this film, Fucking 'Em All. Some places call it Loving 'Em All. And it was a film I liked a lot. I actually really enjoyed that film. And one of his films that has always been on my radar to watch, but I've never seen, is Lilia Forever. It's one that everybody talks about, and I just haven't seen it, man. I don't know how readily available it was. But this also comes with some of his other films, Together, A Hole in My Heart, Container, Mammoth, and We Are the Best. I really am looking forward to this box set, man. Especially because when I watched Fucking 'Em All, it wasn't on the best. It was on a YouTube rip, and it didn't look the best, but it was watchable. So I'm glad that this is finally coming, and man, I'm just really looking forward to this box set for sure. Another one on this day that I want to mention that I hope people aren't going to pass up on is Anthony Quinn in Requiem for a Heavyweight.
Requiem for a Heavyweight was originally a TV drama presented on the CBS series Playhouse 90. Twilight Zone creator Rod Serling, a former boxer, wrote the script after reading about one of the greatest American athletes of all time, heavyweight champ Joe Louis, forced to become a wrestler just to eke out a living. The television production, which starred Jack Palance as the fighter, won Emmys for Serling, director Ralph Nelson, and Palance, and won a Peabody Award, too. Nelson also directed the film version, allowing for much more freedom of camera movement than live TV. And you'll see that vividly in the fight scene that opens the film, which is shot entirely from Quinn's point of view. You will certainly recognize his opponent, a man who was, for a time, arguably the most famous person in the world, Muhammad Ali, then still a young fighter named Cassius Clay, still 2 years away from winning the heavyweight crown by knocking out Sonny Liston. From 1962, also with Julie Harris, Madam Spivey, and Jack Dempsey playing himself. This is one of the great sports movies ever made, Requiem for a Heavyweight.
This is from 1962, and I believe this was based off a television play. This was about Anthony Quinn, who used to be a bigger fighter, kind of at this point in his life where he's not getting the attention that he was when he was a more kind of prime fighter. That he's really going through a depression in his life. Really fantastic film, man. Anthony Quinn's performance is out of this; it just knocks it out of the park. And this is one that, especially if when it comes to a lot of boxing films, this is one that should be more talked about. Man, I really enjoyed this one. I haven't seen the television play that this is based off of, but if it's any indication like this, then it's got to be good for sure, man. As well as, now what's interesting is that at the beginning of the month, there was it showed that Mondo Macabro's Bollywood horror set was released, or is being released, but at the end of the month, it looks like they are all individually released here. I'm not sure if that is intentional or not, but either way, that is coming. As well as I should mention, it looks like a standard edition of Blood for Dracula is coming from Severin. It looks like just the Blu-ray because they had that 4K a little while ago, but a very interesting film for sure. And definitely worth keeping an eye out on. So, man, that is the start to the year. A lot of good stuff coming. Definitely a lot of good stuff to pick from. No shortage there. And I hope you guys come across some good titles. And if you have any titles, feel free to drop them in the comments below, man. All right, all the best, man.